Hello, my name is Spencer Stevens, and I am Senior Vice President of Production Technology and Security at Movie Labs. The topic of this video series is one of the most challenging issues I have encountered in my career, and I have worked in motion picture and television production for much of my working life. We start out this series on production security and zero trust with the reasons why the workflows of the 2030 vision, together with the challenge of protecting cloud infrastructure in the face of the changing threat landscape, mean that zero trust is the security architecture of choice. The second and third episodes of this series are about the two fundamental zero trust concepts of authentication and authorization. In the fourth episode, we will get practical and take what we have discussed so far and explore how a typical workflow can be protected with zero trust. The fifth episode introduces the Common Security Architecture for Production, CSAP for short, which is a workflow-driven zero trust security architecture for the collaborative environment of media production. And in the final episode of this series, we will walk through implementing zero trust. And spoiler alert, it may not be as difficult as it seems. By the way, you may have already watched this first episode with a different introduction, and if you have, please feel free to go straight to episode 2. Production security is facing a perfect storm, and there are three conditions that are combining to create this storm. The first is the movement to cloud production, and what that means for the way we create media. Movie Labs published its 2030 vision of the future of media production, and we are seeing many organizations aligning with that vision or expressing a very similar view. To understand the second condition, we have only to turn to one of the Cloud Security Alliance's own publications. Securing cloud infrastructure is complex. The third condition is a continuing increase in cybersecurity incidents, as can be seen by reading the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. That is happening despite the increasing sophistication of the tools that defenders have available. For many experts, this shows that the perimeter model of security, protecting the organization and its boundary, has failed. In the very beginning, production infrastructure was kept in a building with physical security such as locks and CCTV cameras. Media went into the building on film and tape, and it came out on film and tape. The walls and the security doors protected it. The internet offered the opportunity to improve workflows. For example, to transfer data between locations. But this came at the cost of the infrastructure being exposed to outsiders. The solution was a security model, the Fortress model, which has much the same characteristics as physical security. There is a secure perimeter, and with a gatekeeper, typically a firewall. The organization is in a fixed location, and security is predicated on the belief that everyone inside the security perimeter is a good actor and the bad actors are on the outside. But let's look at what cloud production looks like. Here we have cloud infrastructure, perhaps on multiple clouds, with workflows like camera to cloud and remote users connecting directly to the cloud, and other organizations working on a production sharing its cloud infrastructure. Cloud production isn't contained within a single location, nor is it only accessed by users directly employed by the production. The most obvious things about this diagram is that everything is happening outside of the security perimeter. Cloud production infrastructure is too complex to extend the security perimeter around it. So perhaps in a particular case, it might be possible to use a traditional security perimeter, but it will be complex, and complexity is the enemy of security. Besides, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room, which is that security perimeters don't keep intruders out. And given the number of security breaches where employees participate, either unwittingly or deliberately, we can't trust those inside the perimeter that we might wish to view as good actors. In 1460, James II of Scotland opened fire on Roxburgh Castle with his brand new siege cannon, signalling the beginning of the end for medieval castles. The fortress security model is already headed down that same road to oblivion. The COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated aspects of the Movie Lab's 2030 vision. People are working from locations outside of their offices, and workflows that historically were disconnected or had limited connection are now well connected. In the 2030 vision, we will shift from moving the data to the application to moving the application to the data. This means that infrastructure is shared with users, both employees and contractors, with vendors, remote production locations, and so on. Workflows are flexible, reconfigurable, and global. They don't have an inside and outside, and they are not in a fixed location. In cloud production, the premise of the fortress security model fails on three grounds. Good actors are on the outside as well as the inside. It's no longer about fixed locations, and you cannot be 100% sure bad actors are not on the inside. And that's universally true for any connected environment. There is a solution. It requires that we reconsider the assumptions that we make about the infrastructure. As you'll see, if you read the Verizon report, bad actors are getting into infrastructure that has been secured. That means that we should begin with the assumption that the security of the infrastructure has been compromised. And as a working assumption, it's certainly better than assuming that the infrastructure hasn't been compromised. That assumption is the basis of the Zero Trust security architecture. In Zero Trust, nothing is automatically trusted. A computer isn't trusted because it's connected to a particular port on a switch or because it's connected through a VPN. A user isn't trusted just because they're using a computer that is trusted. A 2019 publication from the US Defense Innovation Board stated that a Zero Trust access policy had been used in the NSA's network, Snowden would have been unable to obtain the broad range of documents he released to the public. And that is true with almost every breach where someone was assumed to be trustworthy because they were inside the network. Our goal must be to secure everything on an untrusted infrastructure. This diagram reflects the NIST Zero Trust architecture. At the center is a subject using a system to access a resource. However, the subject and the system are untrusted until the policy enforcement point has determined that they can be trusted to access the resource and allowed to do so by a security policy. There are many ways of looking at the characteristics of a Zero Trust architecture, but they come down to authentication and authorization. Trust has two components. The first is whether something is trustworthy, and that's a risk assessment issue. In a blog post, we use the analogy of a cardiac surgeon. Before you trust a cardiac surgeon to operate on your heart, you check their credentials and their success rate. The second component of trust is whether something that claims to be the thing you trust is actually the thing you trust. Is the person behind the surgical mask that's standing over you holding a scalpel the surgeon you were expecting? And that's authentication. So, in Zero Trust, everything must be authenticated, and that includes users, systems, and services. Of course, just because something is authenticated and can be trusted, it doesn't mean it should be allowed to do anything. Zero Trust requires that only authorized activities can take place. The authorization, which includes confirmation of authentication, is at the point of action or consumption, for example, where data is read. Authorization is conveyed in policies. Zero Trust security is not new. In 2009, Google responded to a significant security breach of their corporate infrastructure by implementing BeyondCorp, a Zero Trust solution. And recently, that has become a product on Google Cloud. In 2010, John Kindervag of Forrester Research described the Zero Trust model in what has become a seminal publication. The NIST Zero Trust architecture document is the reference people generally use today. That's it for this episode in our series on production security and zero trust. If you have any questions or are interested in getting involved, please get in touch through our website, which is www.movielabs.com. Thank you for watching. If your company is ready to take the next step in implementing the Movie Labs 2030 vision, consider joining the growing global community of implementers who work directly with Movie Labs and its member studios in the Movie Labs Industry Forum. The forum offers you a seat at the table with key industry leaders worldwide who are committed to the 2030 vision and the future of media creation. The QR code on screen now is a link for more information. We hope you'll join us.